Today's presentation is called Your Color is Right, but it's still costing you money. And what I mean by this is that um, you could have operators doing everything right in your plant, and yet color still gets rejected, and you still have to do reprints. We're going to go into details about that and how you as a printer can minimize that cost in your organization. But before that, let's just go into a couple new things that we've added in ChromaChecker recently, and including we have a new print inspector dashboard, which allows you to save your presets for desired printers, desired departments, desired locations. And let me just demonstrate that for you because it's pretty slick how it works. I'm going to just go ahead and log into my ChromaChecker. And by the way, if I just go back here, we're taking a list, early access list for people who want to test out our display inspector. We're hoping it should be ready in about a month to 6 weeks to actually test. And the concept of display inspector is imagine you as a printer will be able to give your customer display inspector, and ideally with some sort of inexpensive instrument like the i1 Pro display, which is about $250. And as long as they have a decent monitor, you will be able to publish what's called a ChromaChecker project, which is essentially a ChromaChecker print requirements document. And they can preview on their screen accurately what is going to print out from your printing device. So it could be Grackle, it could be printing on fabric, it could be any special situation. And by hooking Display Inspector on the customer side into your print process, you can ensure that what they're seeing is what they're actually going to get. So Display Inspector, like our Print Inspector, quantifies how accurate the display is at rendering the given print condition you're simulating. And it can even go as far as if you have a spot color that's really critical, the operator can take the instrument, measure the spot color, let's say a Ritz red, off of the display of the PDF of the Ritz red box, and it will tell you the delta E or how close that color is to the actual Pantone or ChromaSpot color that it's referenced off of. So it's a real breakthrough in terms of really taking that last step at eliminating all proofing, making everything electronic, and knowing that what you're seeing electronically on the display is actually going to print. So with that, let's go into the new things with ChromaChecker. And the first thing I'd like to share is the print inspector presets. So I have my department set up. I have prepress, conventional, digital, large format, and I can go ahead and click here and say, hey, I want to see only digital. And now it just automatically brings up all my digital presses at a 30,000 foot view. Green on the right is great. Red on the right is suspect. And if I wanted to switch over to conventional, I click on conventional. Here's all my conventional presses. So I can quickly see how they're performing. I can go back to my departments and look at it on a per department basis. So uh, this makes it really easy to go in and look at how any part of your print manufacturing is performing and help you understand how well it's doing. Next, we've added an ErgoSoft RIP support for spot color LUTs. So if you have ErgoSoft, this is a nice capability. The next thing we're doing is sharing libraries from the brand to the print service provider, or having the print service provider build a library and share it back to the brand. So these are real powerful capabilities so that you can build color libraries and distribute them to your print service providers, or let the print service provider build a library and have them send it back up to the brand. We've also added a 3D gamut viewer in ICC Profile Inspector. Let me just show you that because it's pretty slick. So if I go to my ICC profiles and I choose a profile, let's say I look at my Epson gloss, and as I oh, I jumped the gun, I think, a little bit on this. This one will be ready shortly. I was thinking it would be ready by now, but this is what it's going to look like. It's going to look like this. So you've got a 3D gamut view that you can spin, you can zoom in, you can zoom out, you can cut slices through it. And of course, when you do a profile compare, you'll be able to compare two profiles against one another. So here I'm comparing indigo with grackle, and the green is grackle, and the colored is indigo. And so you can see what color gamut the indigo has, which here it's blue. People who have indigos know that the native blue on the indigo is more blue than what you can get on grackle. And sometimes people want to exploit that, take advantage of that blue on the indigo, and this gives you the ability to see it very easily. By the way, if there's any questions at any point, like always, please feel free to chime in. The 3D viewer is also included in Virtual Spot. So Virtual Spot is the tool that allows you to take your color library. In this case, I took the Best Buy library of 18 colors. And I said, hey, I need to render these 18 Best Buy colors on my, oh, in this screenshot, I said Fogra. But it could have been my Epson, it could have been my Indigo. And then it will calculate which colors are in gamut or out of gamut of that printing device. Here it's showing me for Fogra 39, which is ISO coded, Best Buy Blue is 4 delta E out of gamut. And you see it right here. That Best Buy Blue is 4 delta E outside the range of color that the press is actually capable of producing. So just know that no matter what you do, if the printer is printing to Fogra, you're not going to be able to render this color within 4 delta E. So this is, again, a great educational tool to help people understand why they might not be able to get the colors that they're looking for, especially if they're printing on uncoated stocks. Next feature we've added is in the operator interface or in Capture, if you're dealing with a press situation, we've added a new patch list feature. And this patch list features is more for an advanced operator that allows them to actually go in and look at the patch list of the color bar and sort based on delta E, highest delta E to lowest delta E, and see where the problem is coming from, primarily in terms of which colors are most off. Maybe it could be a color bar definition problem. Maybe the ink zone's not getting enough ink. All these types of things can help the operator pinpoint why their E-factor score might not be as good as they want it to be and narrow it in. Now, in the past, we've always had this on the cloud, but the operator didn't have direct access to it. And we had some expert operators that really wanted access to this, so we've given them that with this tab at the bottom of the screen. Okay, so with that, let's get into today's topic, which is your color is probably right, but still costing you money. And why passing specifications doesn't guarantee profitable color. So we're talking about consistent color reproduction, clear communication, fewer errors and reprints, and a streamlined workflow. Now, we all have our fair share of problems that come from mistakes, whether it's a wrong profile, a bad calibration, operator error, or equipment drift. That's not what this presentation is about. This presentation is really about why most reprints happen. And most reprints happen when everybody did their job correctly. Now, let that sink in. Let's assume we don't have printer drift and we don't have operator errors choosing the wrong paper or the wrong profile. Let's say everything goes smoothly and still you have to do a reprint. And why is that? They're all in spec, but for some reason or another, one gets rejected. And we all have 1,000 reasons why this is or why this can be. And it's kind of this unspoken truth that the customer is always right and we're going to have to make it good. So the divide is that we've got a measured reality. So we've got, let's say, delta E within tolerance. The device is G7 compliant. The calibration's been verified. But the human reality is that, well, that's not our blue, or it feels darker, or this didn't match. They come in with a print that a printer did for them a month or a year ago and say, it doesn't match this, where they change the rules at the last minute, where all along your press or printer was aiming for something like Grackle. And then they come in and they go, well, yeah, what I was expecting was matching this. And it's like, whoa, time out here. It's all about communication, all about communication. And that's where the money disappears. So you've got time comparing samples in terms of now you have to pull their sample up and your sample and take time to look at them. You need to get on the phone with reassurance calls. You have to discount your print because they're not happy with it and they threaten not to pay, or you need to make reprints because they're really not happy. And there's a whole production hesitation because when you're doing reprints, it costs your company straight money. Taking one job off, putting another job back on that was already on, that's insane how much money it costs to do that. So in this way, none of these issues show up as a color failure. And yet they're all the reason. The reason is because it was a color failure, but it doesn't get documented into the reports anywhere. I can't tell you how many companies I've talked to where the management will say, oh, we don't have color issues. Do we have color issues? I haven't heard anyone talk about color issues. And yet it's like, how many reprints do you have to do? And what's the number one cause of those reprints? And when you start getting operators involved, the people who are actually touching the files and knowing why the reprints have to happen, it's incredible the difference or the lack of connection between what the manager thinks is the reason for a reprint and what is actually the reason for the reprint. So, reprints, though, are just the symptom. The disease is misalignment. Let that sink in. Every printer I know does reprints. And there's lots of reasons for these reprints. But a big reason, and what I would say the whole disease within the print industry today, is misalignment, in that printer A doesn't match printer B, even if they're same make and model, and they're not matching to the customer's expectations. And that's the crux of this. So you've got, from a core standpoint, you've got production capability and you've got buyer expectation. And where they meet, where the production capability meets buyer expectation, if it meets the buyer's expectation, you make money. If it doesn't meet, you lose money and you've got conflict because you need to do a reprint or a make good, something along those lines to dissipate or help improve the customer um, experience. We measure print devices. Almost every company measures print devices. I remember a time when I would do G7 implementations back 10, 15 years ago. And I'd say 30% of the companies that wanted G7, first thing I would ask them is, do you have a color bar? I'd like to see what you're using as a color bar on your press sheet, because if we're going to take the time to put targets on a press sheet, I want to know what the pressmen are measuring off that color bar so there's consistency. And 30% of the time, those companies said, oh, we don't have a color bar. And I was like, palm to forehead, you want to do G7 and you have no color bar to ensure a stable, consistent process. Well, there's no sense of us doing anything related to G7 unless you have a stable and consistent process. So I recommend a color bar for them. Now, those companies that don't have color bars, they're all out of business. They're all gone. And that's a message to everybody else that um, 10, 15 years ago, companies got away without having color bars. That's not possible anymore. You've got to have a color bar because you've got to have consistency, you got to have accuracy. But now people have color bars, and ideally, printers and digital press operators are measuring these color bars. But nobody's measuring the alignment between printer A and printer B. We don't measure alignment. That's not in people's perception yet. And yet, printer A doesn't match printer B. So why aren't you measuring alignment? It's really critical. So, in terms of measuring alignment, this helps us understand which printer is most accurate, which printer is closest to that proverbial bullseye. And then the one that's not as accurate to the proverbial bullseye, you can fix it and try to get it closer to that bullseye. There's a lot of great discussions on LinkedIn about this right now that if you're interested, you can take a look at it. So if you don't have a if you do have two printers that are both printing and they're different, then what's the normal fix? And I call these false solutions. First thing someone might say is, "Oh, we need tighter tolerances. We need to get tighter densities on the press." And that won't necessarily align different printers, which causes more waste. You can ask operators to change one of the printers. Go ahead and manually change one of those printers, which is insane because that guaranteed is not reproducible and will again create more waste. And then this one we hear all the time. Let's make a new G7 curve. Let's make a new G7 curve. Let's make a new ICC profile. And if that device has not been stable, that's just going to create more waste. It's not going to solve anything. So these are all false solutions that we naturally fall into the trap of saying, well, let's try this because it should make things better. And it often doesn't. What you should really be asking is, are your printers capable of meeting the expectations that you're selling? Margin is lost before printer even prints. Because if you've got multiple printers, can you tell me with authority that all the printers have the same RIP settings? That you're using the same paper or at least the same color and texture of paper between your proofing and your conventional press? Are you using the same manufacturer of printing equipment or light booths or measurement devices? And are these printers in the same environment, meaning the same temperature and humidity areas? And do those stay the same over time? So many times people sell print to a customer that they have no business printing for, meaning the customer's expectations are extremely tight and the printer's capabilities are not so tight. And so knowing ahead of time what the customer's expectations are and knowing what your equipment capabilities are critical to having a successful sale and sellable print. So this is the key answer is it's simple math. What is your expectation for how close your printers match to, let's say, Grackle? Do you know what that number is? I can't, I have taught many G7 expert classes. And if you take a G7 expert class from me, one of the first things I'll ask is how accurate is your printer to Grackle? And I get these G7 experts because oftentimes it's a renewal. So they've been certified as or qualified as G7 experts. And I'll ask, how you've got two printers, they're both G7 compliant. Which one's more accurate to Grackle? And they'll look at me going, I never thought about it like that before. And to me, it's like, how can't you think about that? If you've got two prints that are different and they're both G7, how do you start knowing which one to fix? Well, ideally, if one's G7 and one isn't, make the one that isn't G7 G7. But even then, they're still different. How do you fix them? Well, it's really knowing how accurate they are. And then that's the production capability. And then really understanding also what your buyer's expectations are. Is your buyer an expectation of a four? If they are, and your printers are at a five, this is a scenario where you're losing money before ink ever hits the paper because your printer's capabilities aren't up to the capability of what the buyer expectations are. And this is ground one for failure, and why I believe that 75% of the printers in North America make less than 2% margin on sales because they don't think about it this way. And I'm taking a scenario here where I have two printers that are both reasonably accurate to a given reference. But now let's talk about how accurate the two printers are to one another. Let's say this buyer is buying a lot of print and half is coming off printer one and half is coming off printer two. And yet printer one and printer two, the E factor or the difference between how these two printers are printing is a nine. This the customer is going to take one look at it and go, "What are you doing? I'm not paying for this. This is not even in the same ballpark in terms of their expectations." And just by the way, essentially 50% of the brand owners in the world, their expectations are like four. Okay, so half are worse, meaning half want even more match, closer match, and half are more lenient. And those are the ones that this printer, if you're running your printers at a five, those are the customers you should be going after, not the brand and buyers that have real tight color requirements. So this is where you've got a major problem, and you're going to have to do make good. And chances are you already lost money on the job. And everything can be right. The profiles are right, the G7's right, the paper's right, everything's right, and yet you're still losing money on this job. So, what if you could see misalignment before the ink hits the paper? It would stop arguing, it would stop finger pointing, it would stop um, having to have you defend the data. And ideally, you should align and know your alignment ever before you ever do a quote. So this is not a demo. This is not meant to be a math lesson. This is not meant to be a sales pitch. It's really just helping you understand how you can see how your color behaves on your printing devices. It's simple. Start with one printer. And if you already have measurement data from that printer, you can upload it into ChromaChecker, and ChromaChecker will tell you how accurate it is to Grackle. If you have data from two printers, you can upload both sets of data, see how close each printer is to Grackle and how close they are to one another. And you know what? We'll help walk you through it. We'll help you do that. And you can do it for just one workflow, and you get one clear answer. And the question is, are we selling color that you can actually produce? That's the key. So we'll do this on a one-on-one basis, guided, confidential, and no obligation to help you understand how your color behaves. So here's the real question. Is what you're selling what you can consistently produce? Not occasionally, not on a good day. We're talking consistently, hour after hour, week after week. If alignment is strong in your workflow, that's excellent. This will confirm it. If it isn't, this will help save you money because it will help uncover why your printers are different and what you can do to stop losing that margin. Just clarity. If this feels relevant to you, I hope you follow up with us. My email is david@chromachecker.com, and between Larry and myself, we'll be happy to walk you through how your color behaves. Good color is not the goal. Sellable color is the goal. And alignment is the difference. Do you know what your number is for sellability? Has anyone ever asked you that before? Now is as good a time as any because understanding how well your printers align, especially related to your customer expectations, is what makes print sellable. So I hope you enjoyed today's seminar on why you can be doing everything right and still losing money on print jobs. And I'll leave you with the definition of manufacturing. Manufacturing is taking raw materials such as ink and paper and creating a product such as a brochure or any other printed type of document you want to imagine that meets customer expectations. Do your prints always meet customer expectations? What is your reprint rate? What is your make good rate? These are symptoms, and alignment is the difference. So I'm guessing we haven't had any questions because Beth usually interrupts me if we have.
Juan just said greetings when we first started.
Okay, well, um, I'll give it another second if anyone has any questions that they'd like me to address. And if not, I hope you found this interesting. And we will be sending out a survey just to see what your feedback is on this, to see if we're hitting the mark, if we're making sense, if this is of interest to you. If you want to learn more, we would very much appreciate it. We're trying different things this year to try to improve the education and the awareness of making color more easy to communicate and hitting those customer expectations time after time. So with that, I bid everyone a great day, and I really appreciate your time and your energy for sitting through this, and I hope we can talk again soon.